Call this April 28th, 2022 meeting of AMAS Policy Committee to order. Time is now 1:31 p.m. And as you might have noticed, I'm not Wolfgang Young. I'm filling in for Wolfgang. He got called away to another meeting with the commissioner, so I'll be filling in for him today. So we'll do roll call. Mr. Constance, you're here for Meg's Hotel?
Yes, I'm here.
And Forrest Dunbar's
Yep.
replacing John Weddleton.
Yep.
Okay.
Forrest Dunbar.
Mr. Trombley is not going to be here today.
He will not make it.
Then there's no replacement.
No.
Okay. And Emma Pokin.
I am here. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we have a quorum. So Aaron, you want to do the public involvement announcement?
I'd be happy to. So AMAT's committee meetings are open to the public, and the public is provided an opportunity to comment at each meeting. Business items are first presented by staff or a consultant. After the committee discusses the business item, the public is invited to formally comment. Each participant will have 3 minutes to speak on their topic. And then a couple of housekeeping items first. If you're joining us virtually and you're not a member of the committee, please turn off your camera when you're not speaking on an item. And if you're joining us by phone, to mute and unmute the microphone, press *6. I have a couple additional items just as a heads up to the committee members. You may see a device in front of you called the OWL. It's a new thing that we're testing out to not only continue our audio recording of meetings, but do video recording as well. So this device does a mostly 360 view of the room. We may actually get 2 of them to help with that. So just a heads up, everyone in this room is on camera. And so these will be posted, the recordings posted online where members of the public can watch. We've gotten feedback from the public that it was hard to follow along without having any kind of video to see who was speaking on what item. And additionally, I just want to let everyone know that to help transition to this video recording, for the committee members, we're going to start doing in-person only attendance of the meetings. Unless an issue comes up for last-minute changes and they need to attend virtually, we'll do that. But majority, we should be in person as often as we can, please. And the same change is happening to the technical advisory committee. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. So do we have an approval of the agenda?
This is Emma. I will move to approve the agenda.
Christopher, I'll second.
Thank you. Do we have any changes? Okay, are there any objections to adopting the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. All right, so moving on to agenda item number 4, we have before us the minutes from the March 24th, 2022 for approval. Do we have a motion?
This is Emma again. I'll move to approve the minutes.
Second, Constant.
You, any changes or discussion? Hearing none. Any objections to approving the minutes? Hearing none, the March 24, 2022 minutes are approved. Moving on in the action items, we have action item 5A, 2040 MTP Amendment 1. Aaron, will you be presenting?
Yes, I will. Happy to present. So everyone knows that MTP is the AMAT's long-range transportation plan that we have to do every 4 years. Well, Tony's working on that. So the current approved one is the 2040 MTP. And so it's out there. And right now we're having to do a quick amendment to the MTP to add a new project in. So this is the Alaska Cargo and Cold Storage Warehouse Facility. It's on the Anchorage International Airport property. How this project came about is AEA, the Alaska Energy Authority, on behalf of AIA, applied for the build grant better utilizing investments to leverage development. It's a federal grant in 2020. They received that build grant. And then nobody told AMATS until February of 2022 that this needed to be into the TIP and MTP. So AMATS and staff has been racing to get this included into our documents. If it is not included in before the end of the fiscal year, which is before the end of the fiscal year, September 30th, 2022, the money will be lost. So we're doing everything we can. So there are two paths that are happening, the TIP amendment, which is happening right now, amendment number 3. And then there's the MTP amendment, which is before you today. A couple of quick things about this. This is a 715,000 square foot climate controlled warehouse facility located at Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport. Phase 1, which this funding is going to go towards, is about 190,000 square foot of that warehouse, with the option to include aircraft parking. We do have a quick schedule on the memo in front of you that talks about a 30-day public comment period happening in May. And then we will go to the MOA Assembly public hearing in April, May. And then June will be review of the comments. And then July will be final approval by FHW. Well, technically we say FHW and FTA approval. I actually found out that this does not need FHW and FTA approval. Once the policy committee approves it, it is done. You just need to notify FHWA. The reason for that is because there is not an air quality conformity analysis requirement for the transportation side of this plan. Although it doesn't require the transportation conformity analysis, it still requires general conformity, which is the FAA version, to my understanding, of conformity analysis for air quality. So I will be working with the applicant to ensure that they understand what that general conformity is and to guide them to the correct people to do it, because that is not AMATS who does it. What's being asked of you today is to release this for a 30-day public comment period. And that's all I had on that. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Thank you. Reading the project description and the benefits, it seems a great project. My question is, again, I'm new to this committee, so this might be obvious, but why do they need our approval for money?
It's a great question that I think everyone has been asking, including myself to FHWA. It's because it's utilizing FHWA funding and it's part of the requirements of it.
Can you struggling with that acronym?
Oh, sorry, Federal Highway Administration. It's the feds who sent, it's all federal money. So part of the requirement they have is this be consistent with the AMATS long-range transportation plan. And so our way of making it consistent, as well as showing that we're still fiscally constrained, which is another requirement, is doing this amendment to add it in and show all the funding where it's coming from.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the committee?
I do have one, and of course I do not have the thing. So before the committee members and on the table, you will see a quick a change to the amendment. As I explained, this does not require transportation air quality conformity, but it does require general conformity. We missed putting that and spelling it out clearly in the actual amendment document itself. So we're recommending a quick edit before this is released to the public to spell out the requirements of that general conformity, that it does require general conformity, not transportation air quality conformity. So staff's asking that when this is released to the public, that you add that change in there as well.
All right, any other comments or questions from the committee? All right, hearing none. Do we have any comments from the public? And if you have public comment, you have 3 minutes to speak on the item. Wait for the online. Do we still have a delay there? Or?
No, it's instant, and it looks like no one's been commenting on this.
Sorry.
Okay, great. All right, so what is the will of the committee?
This is Emma. I would move that we put it out for a public comment as amended with the as recommended by staff.
Can I ask a question before I second that? With yours was, do we need to pass the amendment first and amend the document before we put it out, or can we do it all in one motion?
It's kind of up to how you guys want to handle it. We're a little more generous with our amendments
rules of
here.
orders.
The rules of order versus the assembly. So if you guys feel that we need to do the amendment approval first, we can go ahead and do that before we do the main motion.
That's fine. I
This is
second.
Christopher, and I think that it's accurate. We need to move the amendment because the motion was to put the amended version out. It has yet to be amended.
Second.
So, someone's gonna have to help me with the Robert Rules of Orders, how this works.
We'll need a motion to amend the, or is it a main motion for, main motion to release it for 30 days?
Okay.
And then we'll need another motion to amend that, and then you vote on the amendment first and then the main motion.
So Emma, are you gonna withdraw your motion?
Sure, I will withdraw my motion.
Thank you. So. Do we have another motion?
Okay, so I move 2040 MTP Amendment number 1,
Second,
and then I move, how do you describe this? This is,
wait, don't we need to dispatch the amendment first?
oh, it is the, isn't the main document also called an amendment?
Yeah, we can call it second. I know.
So I just moved the underlying amendment, then we amend the amendment.
I see.
So
Okay, okay,
so I move the staff amendment to the main
Thank you.
amendment.
second.
Sorry about that, Amy. We'll work on that.
Okay, any other modifications? So are there any objections to approving the motion on the table? Hearing none?
Point of order through the chair. Did you
Sorry?
approve the amendment to the main motion?
That's what we're currently doing.
That's what you're doing.
That's what we're
And
currently.
then you'll go back to the main motion as amended.
Terrible putting somebody in person. So that is approved. Okay, do we have another motion?
So we don't have, so we're back to the main motion
Okay, back to the
as
motion
amended.
as amended.
And so you could ask for unanimous consent or we continue to vote.
So do we have any opposition to the amended amendment? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Okay, moving on. Action item 5B. The BPAC appointments. Aaron, are you presenting or someone else?
No, actually, Joni will, the staff to be back will be presenting. Thank you.
Hi, yes, thank you. Yes, my name is Joni. I'm a transportation planner with AMATH, and I staff the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. And we have two new members that we would like to get approved at today's meeting. So the ask is for the committee to approve these two appointees. One is Catherine Katie Severin, her full name, Katie Grace Lorraine Severin. She is coming to us from AARP, so it's a good opportunity for us to engage the senior populations in our bicycle and pedestrian advocacy groups to hopefully get their weigh in on our infrastructure as we're planning for the city. So she's going to be a great addition. She has also worked for the mayor's office. She's also worked with Anchorage Economic Development Corporation, and we know her and like her, and look forward to having her on the committee. She will be appointed to the social services position that we have available if she's approved today. And then our second person is Michael Williams, and he is currently works for NOAA, and he was recommended to us from our member who is leaving us, Eric Gurley, who I'll just give a shout out to now, has been serving on the BPAC for, I believe, 6+ years. And he's just been great. And so he recommended Michael. And Michael is a biking advocate. He has owns real estate company here in town as well as working for NOAA. He bikes everywhere and has 2 daughters. And we are looking forward to having him on as well. So he's very interested in helping us achieve good bike and pet infrastructure in the city. So with that, I will leave that open to the committee. And then unfortunately, both members they had prior engagements today, so they're not available to answer questions on the phone. But it's certainly, we hope that you both meant it. But if you have questions, we could probably get them answered for you.
Thank you, Jeff. So any comments from the questions or comments from the committee? Okay, hearing none. Any comments from the public? Hearing none, what is the will of the committee?
To confirm.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any objections to approving the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Moving on to action item 5C, Title 21 Parking Resolution. Aaron, will you be presenting or someone else?
I'll be presenting. Hopefully you can hear me over the noise in the background. So this is a resolution supporting the MOA Planning Department on the current efforts they're doing for the Title 21 parking and site access requirements. So just briefly, the amendments provide for an area-specific lower parking requirements and streamlines approvals of reductions in parking for developments. It also reforms site access requirements for driveways and pedestrian facilities. So as noted in the resolution, this effort is actually very positive for us as AMATs because it helps to implement our 2040 MTP by addressing goals 5, 6, 3. And then it also helps us to implement MTP action item 3E-5, which is to support the MOA planning and traffic departments on parking strategies that support multimodal transportation options, as well as helping to implement our other studies such as the non-motorized plan and the congestion management process plan. This resolution before you is just supporting those efforts. The Technical Advisory Committee reviewed it and recommended approval with the change that's noted in red on the resolution itself, the new whereas that's added. This was added to call out the action item in the 2040 MTP that this helps to address that inadvertently got left off on the Technical Advisory Committee version of this resolution. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Aaron. Any questions or comments from the committee?
So can you remind me, where is, this is in support of some other action, a reduction? Can you remind me where that ordinance is in the process right now?
I can't, but Elizabeth, are you online to help answer Mr. Dunbar's
Yes.
question about where you're at?
Yeah, I can answer that question. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Appleby. I am in current planning, but I've been working with Tom Davis in long range planning on this code change. So it would be a code change basically that would implement this. The code change is currently with the Planning and Zoning Commission for review. We've had a couple workshops. June is when we expect a decision, and from there it would go to the assembly.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? All right, hearing none. Any comments from the public on this topic? Hearing none, what is the will of the committee?
To approve.
Second.
Thank you. There any objections to approving the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Moving on to action item 5D. A resolution recognizing John Weddleton, who is present today. Aaron, will you be presenting?
Yes, I'll do a quick reading of the resolution itself. So it's a bittersweet moment. Mr. Weddleton is moving back into the public realm of things as a member of the public. And so he has helped to serve on Anchorage policy or the AMATS policy committee for a number of years now. And we wanted to pass this resolution thanking him for his efforts. So I was just going to read it really quick. Resolution of the AMATS Policy Committee recognizing and honoring John Weddleton for his years of service with AMATS. Whereas John Weddleton has proven himself to be an invaluable asset to AMATS in the development of the transportation system. And whereas Mr. Weddleton has been tireless in his efforts to learn, support the non-motorized users within the AMATS area, to help evolve the transportation system and enhance the public process. And as whereas Mr. Weddleton has been a positive and supportive influence on the AMATS process. And now therefore be it resolved that the AMATS Policy Committee recognizes and honors John Weddleton. And be it further resolved that the AMATS Policy Committee thanks John Weddleton for his years of service to AMATS. And be it further resolved that the AMATS Policy Committee wishes John Weddleton the best in his endeavors and looks forward to his continued engagement as a member of the public. Passed and approved by the AMATS Policy Committee this 28th of April, 2022. And I just want to say from my end, John, thank you for years of interesting engagement. And you've been very supportive of staff over the years, and it is very appreciated. I know I can't speak for everyone, but I guarantee you all the staff have very much enjoyed working with you over the years. And thank you.
All right, any questions or comments from the committee?
I have a textual amendment. To move, just there's a spelling error on line 29, be it further, not further resolved. I think that's in John's honor, we should correct that spelling. I think that could be a, what's the term?
An administrative amendment,
Right,
administrative change, modification.
yeah, no, what is the term? Chris, what term am I looking for here when the clerk can just correct something?
Like a scrivener's. Error?
Scrivener's error.
John may have asked some tough questions over the years and challenged a lot in the transportation world, but it was for the better of the public, and it's appreciated the time and effort you put into researching and understanding the transportation needs of our community. John. Really do appreciate it. So, any other questions
I
or
didn't
comments?
see a draft. This is Christopher. I didn't see a draft. But, you know, I think the most significant impact among many that John, that you worked on, when I talk about you in the third person, is the very difficult effort to ensure that the review criterion of all these various plans respect the humans at the end of the kind of impacts, and that they take into consideration all of the users and not just the roads. And I know a lot of people talk about it, but John spent probably the last 3 years working in a very dedicated manner, very steady and thoughtful and thorough manner to bring that to the table. There were times when we recognized that the review criteria for projects 3 times weighted the value of moving traffic at high speed or highest speed during peak traffic times. Like you can never compete if one of those criterion are getting weighed 3 times in the measure. And so, John, I don't know how close we came to getting there, but I think that's work that needs to continue. And I look forward to your ongoing push on that subject.
All right, any other questions or comments from the committee? Hearing Hearing none. Do we have any comments from the public? John Weldon.
I have some closing remarks. Could we pull the podium out to help me? I gotta thank you. First got involved, I think, real actively in transfer station stuff. It was my first assembly meeting, and I was bike racing, and I didn't know anything about what the assembly was or anything. So this was probably 1990, 91, and we changed the law that said if you're on a bicycle and there's a pathway next to you, you gotta get off the road on the pathway, which doesn't make sense if you're training or something, you're going way too fast with the pass. So they just said, show up and wear your bike helmet. So I said, they're okay, and it passed, I had no idea what it was, but so that was quite a while ago. And then when I was on the chair of the Hillside Community Council and the O'Malley Road project came about, started to be talked about 22 years ago, and started learning about that, what's the process and so on. So it's been an ongoing education. I was on the very first group on the Bike Ped Advisory Committee, kind of going through that. That was real interesting, really start diving into AMAS policies and so on. But so this, I said, all the committees and assembly, this one tied in most with what I've been doing over the years. I really enjoyed being on it. The scoring system that Chris was referring to was really something prior to being on the assembly that I was like, this is out of whack. We really double counted making roads faster, bigger, wider, faster for cars, and not so much on other stuff. And I think over a process, and Aaron was very instrumental, I think Joni, on getting that through. And Meredith Noah Volkovic had a staff to work on that. So I think we really have moved that forward in a way where it's practical and it's a more balanced way of judging projects. So it has been really exciting being on this committee, and I appreciated the time and appreciate the resolution. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Are there any other comments from the public?
Yes, Craig Lyon is looking to speak.
All right, Craig, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Craig Lyon, Planning Director, former AMATS coordinator. John, I can't begin to express how thankful I am for all your efforts over the years. You consistently, as you mentioned, but consistently from the time you were on the inaugural AMATS Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, you were always working towards solutions, which I think dialed into what Mr. Constant said. We're just always looking for how this is going to help, the average citizen. You were certainly, as everyone knows, unfailingly honest and always happy to let me know when I was doing something incorrectly. Thankfully, it didn't happen too often, but I did appreciate that. You were, in many ways, a delightful thorn as you brought in things at the last minute because you're, like most assembly members, extremely busy and at the tail end of the process, coming up with things that you would have mentioned a while ago, but you were busy. So this is when you could bring it up. So, but you were a very fierce advocate for your constituency, and I hope that you continue to stay active. We certainly will let you know when a seat comes up on the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee or any other committee that we might want to have you bother us more on. Maybe planning and zoning might be open again. So thank you very much, sir. I appreciate all your help.
Thank you, Craig. So are there any other comments from the public?
There's one last comment from Brad Coy saying, thank you for all your dedicated service, John. That's all we have.
Right. So, hearing no other comments, what is the will of the committee?
Move to approve.
Second. Are there any objections to approving the motion? Can I? As the chair? No, technically no. Okay. Somebody gonna second Forrest's motion?
This is Emma. I'll second.
You, Emma. Are there any objections to approving the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Thank you, John, very much. Aaron, are there any other action items?
No, there are not any other action items.
Okay, so moving on to agenda item 6A, 2050 MTP. Aaron, will you be presenting?
Yes, I will. So I'm placing my other hat on. I am the 2050 MTP project manager. And so we've already kind of mentioned what the MTP is. This is the latest updated version of it that we're working on. We've had 2 public involvement or public comment periods. The first was on the goals and objectives. The second one, which we just finished, was on performance measures and criteria. We got 192 comments during the performance measures and criteria public comment period. So staff is working through those now and hopes to get them posted and sent out to the committee members in the next couple of weeks or so. And the next upcoming big ticket item we have is a meeting on May 11th. There are actually 2 meetings that day. The first is virtual from 11 to 1. And that information is on the MTP website, as well as the nighttime meeting from 6 to 8:30. The 6 to 8:30 meeting is in person at the Fairview Rec Center. They have a presentation starting at 6:35 p.m.
Is that on May 11th?
May 11th, yes. And so that meeting is going to be kind of our start for issue identification, project nomination process. So I highly encourage everyone to show up or participate in some way, shape, or form. If you have any other information or need any other information about it, please let me know, and I can send out the notices. We've already kind of sent out the notices about it, but I'm just reminding. The second thing for that one is just kind of letting people know that we have updated the schedule for the 2050 MTP to add in the modeling work that we have to do, the transportation modeling we have to do. We have to update the model as part of it. That update will take about a year and has impacted our MTP schedule. We have lost some time at the end between when the final public comment period is closed and when we actually need to bring it back before the committees for final approval. We had nine months and that's shrunk down to 3 months. So staff's going to do everything they can to find areas to extend that period from 3 months to hopefully try and get it back up, but we'll see how it goes. Please note, we are still doing a 60-day public comment period for that draft document. We're still having a joint work session with the Technical Advisory Committee and Policy Committee after that or during that public comment period. One of the two, it's on the schedule. And we are also hoping that our strategic planning model, Vision Eval, will allow us to make changes based on the public comments. So that's all I have on that one.
All right, any questions or comments from the committee? Hearing none. Any comments from the public? Hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item 6B, 2023 to 2026 TIP. Karen, will you be presenting?
So the last one I'll be presenting, so I'll be grateful for that. So this is the 23 through 26 TIP. So just as a heads up, every 4 years, we have to develop a transportation improvement program. It's basically our program that shows what we're putting our allocation of federal funds towards every year. So it has to be fiscally constrained. We receive about 30 to 35 million a year, depending on, it was a little more in 22 and 23, or 22, 23, and 24 because of COVID funding. So it may seem a little different there. We have put out the draft version of the 23 through 26 TIP for a 30-day public comment period that ends May 5th. The plan right now for that schedule is once the public comment period closes, staff will sit down and do a comment response summary for any public comments we received. Our plan is to bring that to the committees in May. So at the TAC meeting on the 19th, and then at the policy committee 2 weeks later. Or a week later. Yeah, it's a week later. We've had to shift the schedule some. So what we're going to do there is we're going to sit down and work with the committees at those meetings to kind of flesh out the draft version of it. That'll go towards the interagency consultation group. This is a requirement we have to do to have EPA, DEC, FHWA, FTA, and other groups sit down and kind of review the document to see if and what impacts there will be to air quality. We also have to write an air quality conformity determination, the transportation kind, and put that out for a 30-day public comment period. So, we still have a lot of things to do for this document. So you'll see more of it as we move on in the process. Additionally, this is coming before the assembly. It was just introduced at the last assembly meeting on the 26th, and it's for a public hearing on May 10th. So we'll incorporate any comments we get from the assembly into our comment response summary as well. That's all I have.
All right. Thank you, Aaron. Any questions or comments from the committee?
I have a question.
Of course.
Aaron, when it goes to this interagency group, and it sounded like those were those federal or state agencies?
Both.
How often does that process result in substantive changes to the tip? Or is it more sort of a, I don't want to, just a process that has to be worked through, but usually it's left intact?
Yeah, there are no changes made unless there's I haven't heard of any changes made from the interagency group, because what they do is they basically look at what's there and what impact it could or may not have on the transportation system. And then they write a report on that. And that's the report that we put out for the public to review and say, okay, based on their comments, are there any other changes we want to make? Typically, we try not to make too many changes after the interagency group looks at it, because if you make substantial changes like remove a project or add a project, you have to bring it back to the interagency group for them to review it again to see if that change that impacts air quality. That's why we try and that's why we shifted the schedule to do the public comment period before that and have the committees look at it. So any changes can be kind of solidified at that point before the interagency group sees it.
So can I just follow up, Chair?
Certainly.
So the interagency process is focused just on the clean air requirements, or are there other things that they look at?
It's kind of everything. Cindy Heil, are you on to help explain if there's anything outside of that?
Yes, I am. They're looking at, so I'll just back up a little bit. FHWA doesn't approve the TIP amendments or the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. What they approve is the air quality conformity determination. So the air quality conformity interagency group looks at all the components of the air quality clean air requirements, but they're also looking at the did the AMATs meet the fiscal constraint? Did they meet all of the does the plan not interfere with any of the control measures that you're committed to, or what they call SIP measures, state implementation plan SIP measures? So they look at that, and the interagency consultation, they review all the assumptions that go into the modeling, or to make sure that you reviewed the meteorology correctly, and the because we're a limited maintenance plan, so we have a little bit different way to go about our conformity analysis, our transportation conformity analysis. But the document has to be rewritten, and if you make any major modifications to that, then you have to go back out for another 30-day public comment period. So what you're trying to do is not do this reiterative process where you get through the feds, you get your air quality conformity document, it goes out for public comment. You don't want to make a lot of changes to your TIP. In fact, when the AMATS policy committee goes to approve the TIP in the final approval and the final approval of the MTP, what AMATS has to do by regulation is approve the air quality first. And once you've approved the air quality, you've pretty much solidified. You can't make any major changes to your TIP or MTP at that point, because all the you're attesting that the projects are the way they are, and that those projects will not adversely impact the air quality, because you cannot spend any federal highway dollars in a maintenance or non-attainment area unless you do a conformity analysis that shows that that federal dollars will not exacerbate or degrade the air quality that you have. Did that answer your question?
Yes, but as John would point out, that raises new questions for me. I'll just say one very, very obvious question. Again, I apologize. I'm new to this committee, so I'm going to take a little while to learn this. But it occurs to me that every major road project, especially if we're going through a new area, so if we extend 100th Avenue, for example, would degrade the air quality in that area because we have a lot more car exhaust running through there. So how do they measure it in such a way, or how do they define it in such a way that these large road projects are not damaging air quality?
Well, there's two ways to do it. Anchorage is doing it a much easier way. In the old days, what we had to do was they would use the transportation demand model and you'd have an emissions budget and you'd have to look everything in total because while you might have a large project going through an area, if you don't have congestion, which is, you know, when you have congestion, that increases air quality. But if you have through traffic and it goes quickly, then you don't have, it's actually less emissions than you would. But they look at it by links. Now that we're in a limited maintenance plan for carbon monoxide, what we're looking at is the actual monitors themselves, and we have to stay within a certain percentage of the standard on our actual monitors. So we're not necessarily looking at anything specifically on a road link by link process anymore. It's looking at our monitors and seeing if we're staying below the limit of the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. So it's a little different than it used to be. We're not having to do quite as much modeling anymore. But then it's really important that we follow all the steps when we do all the process. And conformity is interesting because if you don't have your interagency, you don't follow all the steps, you don't cross your T's, dot your I's, you can, an individual citizen can sue or can go to FHWA and attest it, and it will stop your processes. Conformity has a pretty big stick in when it's all said and done. So we've worked really hard to make sure that AMATS hasn't gotten into any trouble with air quality conformity processes that happen here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So any other questions or comments from the committee on this? Hearing none. Any comments from the public on this? Hearing none. Move on. Aaron, are there any other project or plan updates?
There are not.
Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 7. Item 7A, EV spending. Aaron, who will be presenting?
Actually, Shayna Kilcoyne, are you online?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. You can go ahead and share your screen if you want.
The good transition, I think, coming out of this discussion about air quality, we're going to talk about EVs. Okay, I think you see my screen.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So thank you for allowing a few minutes to kind of give an update about electric vehicles and infrastructure in Anchorage and Alaska, while highlighting a couple of projects and what this might look like moving forward, particularly regarding a couple of in the Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act, which was passed in November. As shown here, this is Sector 2 of the Anchorage Climate Action Plan on Land Use and Transportation. The Climate Action Plan was created through a coordinated effort with the University of Alaska Anchorage, the Municipality of Anchorage, and a really great amount of public input, including 100 working group members. And it was adopted by the Assembly in May of 2019. Some of you in the room worked on it. Thank you for that. There we go. Alaska is the #1 state in the country for transportation emissions per capita, and that's not surprising. We have a large land size, small population, and geographic isolation. So switching to electric vehicles is one of the ways that we can reduce those emissions. And the good news is that we've seen a huge investment in the transportation sector, and really innovation is just rippling through transportation. And automotive companies have committed over 300 billion in the last 2 years to electrify their vehicles. We expect in Anchorage nearly 25,000 EVs, sorry, electric vehicles, EVs. I'm going to use EVs today, to be on our roads by 2030. And I am working with experts to create a new greenhouse gas inventory in Anchorage. We're looking at 2015 and 2020. And I'll say that vehicle miles traveled, or VMT, was one of the more difficult pieces to collect. We ended up using Google VMT data and Department of Environmental Conservation data. But we do have some promising modeling and data, I think, for future greenhouse gas inventories. This is a preliminary result from our inventory, but we're getting very close to wrapping it up, so it's pretty darn close. You can see that transportation and mobility, we're still looking at about 42% for emissions from that sector. And in the chart on the right, what we're seeing is a reduction in gas and diesel at 19% and 16%, so a pretty decent reduction from 2015 to 2020. And I think, you know, we can surmise that a lot of that is due to COVID and people were just traveling around town and to work, and to out and about much less. And then the growth that you see, these are the three main sectors, is from Ted Stevens International Airport, which went up about 19%, which we believe also is a factor of COVID. There were a lot more online orders and deliveries that came from outside. So cargo really went up, which is another reason we're seeing that cargo project coming up at AMATS. Nationally, transportation makes up the largest share of greenhouse gas emissions, and mainly that's from gas and diesel. Of course, there are emissions from electric vehicles, and those emissions are to power the power plants where electricity is generated. So Chugach's power plant is generated from gas, hydropower, and wind. Of course, it would be a much different mix if you're powering a vehicle in Fairbanks or Juneau. And an electric vehicle that's charged in the Chugach system is estimated to emit 62% less carbon dioxide than an average efficiency gas vehicle. And you could also consider that an electric vehicle emits no cold start carbon monoxide or other pollutants. In the fall, this is just one of the projects that is relevant to this work. In the fall, we partnered with Chugach Electric to install a level 2 charging station at the Rustic Goat parking lot. And you might ask, why did we install it there? There's actually not a lot of municipal land that's next to an amenity where people can spend time, and that's where you want your charging stations. So this way people can park their car, charge it for an hour while they have coffee or dinner, or go for a walk on the trail and come back. With a level 2, it's faster than what you charge in your home, but it's not a level 3. It's a kind of medium duty charger. So you'll get about 20 to 30 miles within that hour. We do charge for that charge at the Rustic Goat. So the municipality pays for the electricity and earns revenue from the charging. On the left, you'll see registered vehicles, this chart here. As of December 31st, 2021, we had 61 models of hybrid and fully electric vehicles on Anchorage streets. Sorry, I said Anchorage, but I kind of think I want to say Alaska here. And the most common fully electric vehicle is actually the Tesla. You might have seen more of those. I know I've been seeing them. And then the Bolt is the second most common. This information on this chart is from the DMV, and I got it from Chugach Electric Association's website. I did go ahead and recalculate the costs due to our higher gas prices. And the cost of charging an electric vehicle right now is about a third of the cost of fueling an internal combustion engine. And I used $4.50 a gallon, and was looking at about, I think the average fuel efficiency was 21.6 miles per gallon, and 21.6, and I think 2.9 miles per kilowatt hour, which is kind of average vehicle efficiency for both. So put in dollar terms, at $4.50 a gallon, if you drove 10,000 miles in a year, you would save about $1,400 that year. Okay, so getting to the grant portion, you might recall that Volkswagen installed software, I think it started in 2009, that was designed to cheat emissions tests. So a lawsuit resulted in a $10 billion settlement, and a portion of that has to be used to invest in emissions reductions infrastructure. Alaska received 8.125 million and had to use 1.2 million of that for EV charging. So since 2020, Alaska Energy Authority, or AEA, has been overseeing the deployment of those charging stations in communities around Alaska and our most heavily traveled highways. You can see here that $960,000 is dedicated to the rail belt, or actually road belt is what we're calling it, for level 2 and 3 charging stations. So the Alaska Energy Authority put in about $1 million with about $500,000 in private match. And that's for 11 level 2 chargers at 9 locations and 12 fast chargers. Is that what that says? Sorry. At 9 locations, 12 fast chargers. And these are about 100 miles apart. In the future, we'll be looking for charging stations closer to about 50 miles apart. All of these applicants put in private matching funds, and we expect to see those chargers be installed probably this summer. I believe the Homer charging station actually is already installed, and there's some other level 2s that have gone up, but we haven't seen all of the level 3s yet. Okay, and then what's coming, well, on November 15th, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or bipartisan infrastructure law, was passed. And that provides $550 billion from 2022 to 2026 in new federal investment in infrastructure. And that includes roads, bridges, mass transit, water infrastructure, broadband. So it's pretty broad. This funding is really kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity to complete our statewide charging network, as well as looking at community-based installations, both in rural and urban parts of Alaska. Alaska is going to receive over $50 million over the next 5 years for charging infrastructure. So it's quite a bit of money if you consider that the first round of Volkswagen funds was 1.2 million. So quite a huge jump. That money is managed by Alaska Energy Authority in coordination with the Department of Transportation and stakeholders, including the Electric Vehicle Working Group. The Electric Vehicle Working Group is a pretty broad group of state, federal, local governments. I think there's utilities involved, really anyone who's got work around EVs. One interesting piece is that Alaska Energy Authority has to have a statewide plan each fiscal year for that deployment of publicly available EV infrastructure funding. And the first one is due on August 8th, so really right around the corner. I did note that MPOs are eligible for many of the newer expanded programs, such as Safe Streets and Roads for All program. So that's something that AMATs might be looking into. One thing I'm particularly interested in is how we can build up the EV workforce. It's still a nascent market, and from what I've seen, we're seeing infrastructure, but the workforce is really lagging here. So I'm hoping that some of those funds might be able to be used on that. And that is what I've got for you today. I tried to keep it nice and short because I know you have a lot on your plate. So happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you. So are there any committee members that or staff that have questions or comments? All right, hearing none. Thank you very much for the presentation. Moving on to item 7B, Seward to Glen Pell update. Aaron, who will be presenting?
I believe it will be DOT. There's her Sim.
We've got a clicker here for you, and it's gonna configure. Sure.
I'm going to go to share. And it's already open.
That's right.
Yeah, just go back there and go to share. Yeah, go there. Grab that. There you go. Yeah. Go to the
Technology, you gotta love it.
I know.
There
we go.
Okay, sorry about that.
Thank you very much. Okay, Kelly Summers, why don't you introduce?
Hi, thanks for having us here this afternoon to give you an update on our Seward to Glen Mobility Planning Environmental Linkage Study Project. My name is Kelly Summers. I'm the project manager with the State of Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities. I want to make sure everybody's aware that this project is a joint venture between the state DOT and our municipal partners with AMATS. So with me today is Lori Cummings to give you a presentation on the project. Lori's with HDR and she is a senior planner with HDR and the lead planner on this project. So with that, I give you Lori.
Thanks, Kelly. Good afternoon, everyone. The purpose of today's presentation is just to give you an update on what we've been doing on the project since we were last before you in, I believe it was November 2021. So since then, we have finalized our traffic forecast report, which forecasts traffic to 2050 based on the Department of Labor population projections. We also finalized the brief description of the environmental setting report. It's kind of a mouthful. And that basically describes the existing environmental conditions in our. Okay.
Is it on? We'll just click.
Okay.
I'll just
Yeah, I
click-
can just-
Go ahead and click forward. Yeah.
Perfect. So, and like you said, you gotta love technology. Right, and so that work has been completed and those reports will be available on our website. We have completed drafts of our origin destination study and our no-build 2019 and 2050 travel model runs. Those reports are currently under review and revision by the project team. And so we will have those available later in May. And we are still working on 3 other deliverables. We're working on our system performance report that kind of looks at the existing system and see how it is performing. Are there areas where we have deficient roadways? In terms of, does it meet the standards that we have right now in terms of like lane width? Does it meet our needs in terms of what we intend to do, for land use? And we will be looking at like non-motorized and a transit component of that as well. We are working on the purpose and needs statement for the project that explains the transportation challenges that we're looking at as part of the PEL, and also the screening criteria, which will allow the project team to evaluate alternatives. We're trying to avoid things like we've heard in the past where we have multiple criteria that measures, road and traffic volumes and avoids other modes. So we're currently working on all of those and we'll have them available in the next couple of weeks. So next slide, please. So what we have been doing a lot of is public outreach. So I'm going to read a little so I don't forget anything. We've had a virtual public meeting, an online open house, 5 small group meetings, 2 listening posts, and much more. Throughout the comment period, the project team has received over 400 comments on the project. Next slide, please. And as you can see here, a lot of these comments have been about non-motorized needs in the community. You can't see the number, but there's about 150. So it exceeded a lot of the other comments by a significant amount. So next slide, please. And so as part of our outreach process, we had a comment map where people could identify the locations where they had concerns. So this map shows where people identified non-motorized issues and needs in the community. What they identified ranged significantly from locations where they felt we needed new facilities, like a new trail connection or a new sidewalk, where existing facilities needed to be improved, where a curb cut was needed, where more maintenance is needed because it's icy, where people are having trouble crossing the street from one side to another as a pedestrian. So as you can see, a good portion of our study area, people have identified non-motorized needs. Next slide, please. So we recognize, that the community is very concerned about non-motorized issues as part of our PEL. And so we're going to be incorporating a lot of the existing information into our process. The city actually has a lot of information about non-motorized use in the area. AMATS recently completed their non-motorized plan, which is a wealth of information on this topic. It provides a vision for non-motorized travel in the area to move people safely and efficiently without the need for a motor vehicle. And they actually conducted a robust analysis of the existing non-motorized conditions in the area. It conducted a demand analysis to understand where non-motorized improvements may have the most benefit. You know, the potential demand was assessed through an evaluation where people lived, work, play, shop, access transit, and go to school. So that's a lot of things. So areas with a higher density of those type of facilities reflect an area that has a higher demand for non-motorized use. They also did other analysis. One type of analysis they did was bicycle level of traffic stress, which considered items such as the posted speed limit, the presence and character of bike lanes, and street width. And so it kind of categorized the roads on a 1 through 4 basis. And the roads in our project area, you know, varied on that spectrum. In general, the roads with higher traffic volumes had higher levels of traffic stress.
Can I ask a question, Lori?
Yes.
And again, I apologize that I'm new to this committee, so you might have already presented this in the past. I'm just getting caught up. It looks like the bottom of your, so am I right? That's Boniface on one side, or the Burgaw rather.
Burgaw, yes.
Burgaw. And then it looks like so there's the coupling, the Ingra Gamble coupling crossing to Bar. And then the southern border of your project area, it's
essentially Chester Creek.
Chester Creek Trail, right? So am I right to think that this Pell study area doesn't include the area where the Midtown Relief Congestion Project is planned? So the Northern Lights, Tudor, going down Seward, that isn't included in the study area, is that right?
Correct. Our project area goes up to their project area because they have been completing their studies, and so we connect to that. But our project areas do not overlap.
So you do the same kind of studies in different areas.
Right.
How, I guess it's a question for further down the road, but I am curious how this will be impacted by that very large project that is right on the border of this. So, okay, I'll just, maybe later I'll ask another question about it, but that's, so this exact same work was done to the south for that other project, you're saying?
Similar work was done because it was a different project. It had its own conditions and needs, like it's more of a freeway section through there. So it had different issues it had to deal with, like higher speed traffic.
Sure.
Because most of this is arterial, we have more pedestrian concerns, lower speeds, kind of thinking, should this be still arterial? Should it be a highway? Whereas, you know, the Midtown, it was already a highway, so it's not dealing with some of those same concerns.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Chris.
Thank you. Just to add a little bit of context for us, the downtown study, this one was programmed years before the Midtown program was put on the table and even thought about, let alone funded and developed and implemented. And so this project continues to be shuffled to the end of the line and given special second class status in the context of the overall planning process. And as you just heard, really what the neighbors didn't want and the community really resoundingly spoke against was the Midtown project being a freeway project, which ultimately it is. And Fairview is maintaining its concern that they're not being heard by the contractor. They have a resolution coming forward next month in which they're treating this section through Fairview very much like a highway as well, still not figuring out a way to attach the land use concerns when you have residential neighbors abutting federal highway land. And by abutting, I mean like 8 feet off or 10 feet off, you have residential properties and more on-ramps and off-ramps to a federal highway system probably anywhere in America right here. But it's, again, continues to find itself in a second-class position to all those other concerns. I'm appreciating this report and have some concerns to report on after it's done. But in context, this was the original plan. It just got put on the back burner until that other plan was addressed, and they do link because they're the same highway.
Or would you like to continue?
Yes, thank you. So next slide, please. So the city also publishes information about non-motorized use in their annual traffic volume report. You know, here's a snapshot from the report where they're recording usage on the trail system. As you can see here along Chester Creek near Mulcahy Stadium, there's almost 250 pedestrians per day and 300 bicyclists per day that use that. Sorry, I realize it is a little small.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't read what does it say along the bottom? What are those measuring?
Those are different locations along the
Oh,
trail system.
Okay. Got
So
it.
in our project area,
Right.
it's Mulcahy Park.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
So, okay, next slide, please. So the annual traffic report also reports information about crashes, you know, pedestrian and non-motorized crashes, which is something we've heard is a substantial concern for the community. So the map on the left shows the pedestrian crashes and the map on the right shows the bicycle crashes. I apologize if these aren't as legible as they could be because right now we're still working with the traffic department to get data specifically for our project area. So we'll be able to zoom in and really look at our study area. But as you can see, there's a few clusters in our study area that we'll be looking at in more detail. So we're also incorporating additional information about non-motorized use into our project, such as the Vision Zero information, you know, and other sources. So we're still working on our data analysis and collection. So we're intending to incorporate all of our findings into our system performance report. And we intend to have that information available during our next public meeting. Right now, our public meeting is scheduled for May 25th from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. at the Fairview Rec Center. That meeting will be held in person, and there will also be a virtual component, so people can participate virtually if they choose to. So right now we are in this, according to our schedule, we're in the step 3, purpose and need and evaluation criteria. So next slide. Now I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about the project.
Right,
This is
committee
Kristen.
have any other questions?
Yep, thank you. I'm concerned about one thing I just saw was your map identifying where there are human and vehicle interactions. That it was 2020, I think was the year I saw it on the map. I couldn't quite make it out, but there were, I think, 5 on the corridor in the month of March, or like at the end of February and early March. And they were almost all fatal, some with multiple people. And so I want to make sure whatever data is gathered for vehicle pedestrian crashes is significantly broad enough that it doesn't leave out the true problems by virtue of just having a date cutoff that leaves other important items on the table or off the table. And I just would reiterate that I have heard substantial concerns from the folks who live most close to this project that they're not being heard. And so I do know that their comments were submitted through the comment table about the lack of responsiveness that they've had from the contractor. And so I asked them to put it in a form of a resolution instead of just kind of a comment that blurs away and disappears at the bottom of a table at the end of a 400-page document. And so stand by for that. It probably will be heard in the next 2 weeks.
Thanks, Chris. And going back to the traffic data, there is certainly a lag, and certainly we all see the Nixle reports and whatnot of accidents that happen recently, but we've had challenges even with FHWA saying we're not meeting safety performance goals because information from ATD doesn't transfer into the state system. I know they're working on a system to have that transfer happen faster, but there's still going to be a delay, and I would assume the team would be using the most current data available.
Yes, and we have asked for the last 10 years worth of data.
Okay, thank you. Horst.
Yeah, I was asked, what is the source? So it looks like this is, this map has data that's well outside your study area.
Correct.
What is the source of this map? And then also, can I get an electronic copy of this map?
This map is from the 2020 MOA annual traffic report.
Great.
So this information is available on the MOA traffic report, and I can work with Aaron to make sure you have a link to that. That would be helpful.
All right, any other questions or comments from the committee?
I would just say thank you for having this report at my request.
Certainly. Any questions or comments from members of the public? Weldon.
A little bit unrelated, but I just got a text from someone who said the Teams link lets me on, but no one is admitting me. Someone wants to get it.
And we're not seeing any notice of them. If they want to try again, maybe it'll pop up.
Oh, yeah. sorry.
All right. Any
And
other?
we actually do have a hand up. Josie Wilson.
Hi, thank you again for the opportunity to ask a question. This question is actually for um, our Christopher Constant, Mr. Constant. I'm helping with the public involvement on the project and public outreach. And I've been meeting with quite a few different residents of specifically Fairview and Fairview Community Council. And I just was wondering if there was a way outside of the resolution, which I think is great and part of the public process. Is there any way we can connect with you on specifically what you're hearing so we can address these concerns and what people are saying not being heard? Is it not seeing data in, not seeing their comments? Like specifically, if we can figure out a way to resolve that sentiment, and I take that very, very seriously. If someone doesn't feel heard or doesn't feel like their concerns are being considered, especially as we go into this next public involvement season, I just want to be able to get a little more information on what you're hearing, sir.
So I think the best tool, Mr. Chair, to the speakers to reach out to the executive board of the council and really have that talk with them, because I am secondhand in this information, but I certainly hear it. And so I think it would be better for you to hear it directly from the source as opposed to filtered through me.
Can you direct me on whom I should reach out to?
Yeah, the email is just eboard@fairviewcommunity.org, and that gets to all of them all at once.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
All right, Forrest.
I apologize. Can I ask a sort of high level question on this PEL? And I've definitely heard about this project a number of times, but I haven't really focused on it before. Is this PEL, is it a sort of standalone project, or is it one part of a larger project like the Midtown Relief Construction Program, which is hundreds of millions of dollars, right? Is this sort of one hoop that some other large construction project is going through? Or is this in itself like a complete project?
Kind of both. Because what this planning and environmental linkage project will do is we're going to be looking at the needs of the corridor. And then we'll be going through an alternative identification process. And through a screening process, identify a recommended alternative. And that will spawn a list of recommended improvements that will then be implemented. So those recommendations are not funded as part of this. They would go into the typical DOT funding source as independent projects to be implemented. Does that answer your question?
I think so.
Right.
So what you're saying is,
Forrest, can I add to that just a little bit? Thank you. If you look at the Midtown project, you'll find that the message was the overall project will create a list of smaller projects that all have independent utility, so they can be done with or without any of the other projects, right? So you get a smaller scale project out of it that can be done. It should meet the larger scale project because they all have independent utility, but meet the same goal. So that's the party line. But the practical reality is there is some language, at least in the Midtown Congestion and Relief Project, that states that if in the end the department finds the utility is not there, that they're authorized to make changes to the program. And so the fears that I continue to hear from people about the nature of these projects is that they're doing a big project of public outreach that doesn't actually have any long-term kind of traction, and only what will be done is what they wanted to do anyways in the first place. And so that's the concern that I continue to hear from people who live nearby the projects and who are watching these developments much more closely. So yes, the concept is several small projects with independent utility that lead together to one large major project. The PEL project allows for much of the environmental process to be, I don't want to say sidestepped, but kind of done in a more simple way. And then the department seems to have the ability to then just move forward with what they want. That's kind of a cynical view, but having stared down DOT for the last 12 years and seen no change in the corridor for 13, 15 years, it's hard not to have that read.
But to be clear, this wasn't funding spun off the Midtown Relief Congestion Project. This is independent of it.
This funding was before the funding for the Midtown Congestion and Relief Project, and they put the funds in a 2 or 3, 4 years later category. So yes, it's separate. And none of it funds a big project. It funds a plan for several smaller projects.
And I'll add a clarification there to Chris's comments. Part of the PEL, as it goes through, it identifies a large concept, but for actual federal funding, you have to go through a NEPA process. And as part of that, it's expanded upon. And yes, things may change from what is initially found in this larger, higher view when they actually drill down into the projects. So yes, there may be changes in the future.
Right. I don't necessarily disagree with that framework, but it's like NEPA light because this process gives it the blessing and imprimatur of it's been reviewed by the local community. And so that's where we come back and forth with this tension between the neighborhoods that have been asking for relief and just been getting more of the same.
Any other comments?
I'll just add that our public meeting notifications will be going out soon. So I encourage you to let everybody know about the upcoming public meeting and give people an opportunity to share their concerns with the project team. We're happy to hear from everyone. So, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Lori. All right. Is there any other general information items? Before we move on? No? All right. So, moving on to committee comments. Does the committee have any comments to add today? Of course.
Yeah, I just want to say greetings, and Chair LaFrance has appointed me to the seat formerly occupied by Mr. Weddleton, and I've been on the assembly for 6 years, but I have not been involved in AMATs. So while I'm aware of certain projects, I don't really know the lingo, and so I guess my request at the next meeting is, this is something that Fred Dyson used to say, but if you can avoid acronyms or sort of the first time you use an acronym, just describe what it stands for, and then I'll know for the rest of the meeting, or I'll try to remember. That's always helpful. And then sometimes even if you say the words, I won't understand what you mean. So if you could just do me just help me out a little bit started, at the beginning, so I understand what we're talking about. No, I'm excited to be here and to learn, and I know that AMATS is a lot of work, so I will never be able to replace Mr. Weddleton, but I intend to do my best. Happy to be here.
Great. Thank you, Forrest. Welcome. So any other comments from the committee today?
I do have a couple. I know I'm not a committee member, but whatever. So Forrest, we're trying to develop a new packet or a packet for new members. So we're gonna get stuff together to send out to you that includes acronym lists and things like traditional news things. So we'll try our best to, I know I'm guilty of this, not use the acronym immediately and try and explain a little more into it. And I did want to comment real quick. I actually have accepted the position as AMATS coordinator, so I'm no longer just acting. So I'm happy to announce that. I look forward to being able to work with everyone, continue working, because I've been part of the group for a while. So, and then lastly, I do want to just point out that the Technical Advisory Committee meeting has moved back a week. So it was scheduled May 12th. It is being pushed back to May 19th to help accommodate the 23 through 26 tip public comment period.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. And congratulations and welcome to Public Status.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments from the committee today? All right, hearing none, let's move on to agenda item number 9, public comments. Are there any comments from the public? All right, hearing none, we can move to adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
To adjourn.
Do you have a second?
This is Emma. I'll second.
Are there any objections to adjourning? Hearing none, the motion is approved and we are adjourned at 2:51 PM. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.